Masai Ujiri is ready to strike as the Toronto Raptors opened up cap space, opened up flexibility for this kind of reason, for this purpose, because longtime Raptors target, whether it be via trade or free agency, Nic Claxton has expressed some frustration with the Brooklyn Nets lately and is an unrestricted free agent come this off season. So we're going to break down the potential of the Raptors going after the long coveted center by Raptors fans and front office alike, as well as take a look at other options the Raptors could look at in free agency this off season, because clearly this roster needs some shaking up just a little bit more. I mean, I'm happy with the moves that happened ahead of this year's trade deadline. The injuries have really just, taken a toll on this team the second half of the season, and the team is young and growing and developing, but there's still some patches that can be filled, and Nic Claxton would be an awesome piece for this team. But before we dive into that, folks, again, if you want to stay up to date with all the latest Toronto Raptors news, make sure if you're part of the 55% of our viewers that are not subscribed, you guys hit that subscribe button, because we want to keep you up to date with everything regarding this Toronto Raptors team. Well, let's dive straight into it, because Nic Claxton's a guy that has excited the possibility of him joining the Toronto Raptors has excited a lot of Raptors fans in the past. And there's been rumored trades, whether it be Norman Powell, a few seasons ago now at this point, Chris Boucher for Nic Claxton a couple seasons prior. I mean, the Raptors have been linked to Nic Claxton multiple occasions, and now in a contract season where the Nets have really been struggling without draft picks, with the exception of Mikal Bridges, without any real young stars on this roster, they're a team that's pretty directionless, and they aren't really utilizing Nic Claxton to the best of his capabilities, and he's expressed his frustrations with this in a recent sort of, quote that's coming out, as basically Nic Claxton seems to be analyzing his offensive role with the Brooklyn Nets as he heads toward the possibility of becoming a free agent after this season. He says, "I'm open a lot," Claxton told the New York Post. "I've just got to keep putting myself in the right spots and hope I get the basketball." So again, we get the, frustration with losing, being on a team that doesn't really have much of a future, being on a team that's secondary in your own city in the Brooklyn Nets. That's not what's addressed in this article, even though those are almost given frustrations with, any Brooklyn Nets player on the roster right now. But Nic Claxton, despite being, with the exception again of Mikal Bridges, one of the most talented players on this roster, isn't getting the touches that he sort of needs, and he's putting himself in the right spots and just hasn't been utilized the right way with this Brooklyn Nets roster. So that's clearly some frustration coming out of Nic Claxton's camp. There's been rumblings about him potentially leaving the team and stuff in the offseason. So now he's directly speaking out on how he's feeling about this Nets squad. So what does this mean for the Raptors? Again, I said it in the intro, the team has created some cap flexibility this summer in trading away OG Anunoby and Pascal Siakam. Again, they were free agents as well, so in theory they had it regardless, but got some assets back, confirming that they have that flexibility for the future. And Nic Claxton is a guy that fits exactly the Toronto Raptors timeline. I mean, he's a guy that's 24 years old right now, going to be 25 next season, but 6'11", extremely athletic. He blocks a lot of shots this season, averaging 12 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists on 63% shooting. Again, not much of a shooter, not going to be expecting much from the three-point line from Nic Claxton, but as well as from the free throw line. That's probably his biggest Achilles heel in the NBA here right now. But defensively, he is a presence. You can look at it this season. 1.2 turnovers, 2 blocks per night, 0.7 steals. Claxton's a dude that is just an absolute rim protector. He's an intimidator down there in the paint. He can move his feet, and unless he's guarding Victor Wembanyama, because there's been some recent highlights of Wembanyama kind of torching the Brooklyn Nets, he's a guy that is a big man, a big threat down there in the defensive end for any opposing team that's coming into the lane. We've seen it playing against Nic Claxton. He's an elite shot blocker, he's an elite rim protector, and he's mobile. He can move his feet, stay with people around the three-point line. Just an athletic big with tons of potential for the future at just 24 years old. The Van Stats love him as well in the defensive end. I mean, his defensive box plus minus is very solid, win shares for all that type of stuff. So Claxton would be a really nice fit on this roster. Just being a lob threat. Guys like Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, they'll be able to sort of give him as a massive target the proper touches, the proper feel to maximize his potential. He can also be played alongside of Kelly Olynyk as a athletic sort of attacker at the rim, and then Kelly Olynyk is more of a passer, facilitator, three-point space. So he's a guy that, Scottie will be a big target to sort of catch those lobs because, again, this is where sort of leads into the second part of this video is if we brought in Nic Claxton, gave him a significant contract, because again, we look at his sort of contract here now at this point, unrestricted. Last season was only making $8 million, which is kind of crazy, but that number is going to go up extremely, come this offseason, given his potential, even if his stats aren't crazy right now. But with Jakob Poeltl, he's been a guy that's been a really nice fit for this team. Dealt with some injuries when he's been out of the lineup. The Raptors are horrific, but when he's in there, this team is a pretty solid roster. And Jakob Poeltl is the anchor of our defense, is a threat himself in the paint, isn't a lob threat much, but is a guy that can be a big target, that finishes well around the basket, has a soft touch. Again, not much jump shooting from Jakob Poeltl either, but Nic Claxton brings a different dimension as the same way we're seeing with the Dallas Mavericks right now, with Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively down there on that team. I mean, Scottie Barnes, the same way Luka, he can get into that mid-post area. And then for Poeltl right now, he has to throw those passes. Again, you throw it high, you always throw it to Bigs high, but Poeltl has to come down, catch, and then throw it up. Whereas Claxton is a dude that you just throw it up there. He can slam that thing down. He can, dunk with ferocity. He's extremely athletic. Probably doesn't have the same level, even though Poeltl isn't the craziest sort of footwork in the NBA. Doesn't have the exact same touch. Poeltl's a little bit more polished in terms of touch, but that's something that can develop, that can grow for Claxton, and then that just unrivaled athleticism he has in the paint would make him a very, very dominating presence down there on the defense and offensive end. But Poeltl is still good himself, right? 11 points, 8.6 rebounds, 2.5 assists. Poeltl's a better facilitator. Again, 65% from the field, 55% from the free throw line. The shooting is not great from Poeltl either. And despite the fact he's sort of around that Pascal timeline, a little bit older than our core group right now, he's still only 28 years old. So there's lots of years for Jakob Poeltl to give really solid basketball for this Toronto Raptors team. I mean, defensively too, also brings 1.5 blocks per night. So Poeltl is a very, very good option. He's a very, very good piece, but I know a lot of people just want the Raptors to go in that younger direction, a little bit more athleticism, and the frustration with Poeltl, again, with this lack of floor spacing, the really only way to get gravity is he could finish elite ways around the rim, and Poeltl's never going to be that insane lob presence. He's never going to be that major lob threat for this Raptors group. So a Claxton just kind of fits, more gravity, attracts more of the defensive attention. If he's out there, they just have to guard him because you can just toss it up, an imperfect pass, and he'll be able to slam it down, throw it down for whichever team. So again, I'm very happy with Jakob Poeltl on this roster. I think even though, it depends on how this pick thing works out this season, I think Jakob Poeltl was still a great acquisition for this Raptors team. If you have the option of going with Claxton, who's younger, who's more athletic, decisions have to be made along those points. Because again, you could also trade Jakob Poeltl at that point, who's on a very reasonable NBA contract, still young, as we mentioned, still providing valuable minutes for this Raptors team when he's been out there. So the Raptors might be able to get a first, might be able to get some value back for Jakob Poeltl, because it's not the same way we saw Pascal Siakam, OG Anunoby get traded, as those are two guys that were unrestricted free agents this offseason. The Raptors did not have the leverage in those potential trade packages. So if we dealt away a Jakob Poeltl, brought in a Nic Claxton, the Raptors could probably get some value back for Poeltl there as well. And then obviously we have Kelly Olynyk and Jonte Porter as potential bigs off the bench for this Raptors roster. So that's a decision that would have to be made by Masai Ujiri, the front office, if Nic Claxton, they would make a push, use the cap flexibility that they built up, that they've thrown out there, to bring him in. There's also other options out there in the free agent market at the center position, which is one guy that I think has been underrated because he's been coming off the bench for most of his NBA career. It's Isaiah Hartenstein, who's been a monster for the New York Knicks lately. Again, only 7 points, 8 rebounds, 8.5 rebounds, 2.2 assists, again, 63% from the field, and is able to shoot the three. He has some floor spacing. It's very strong in the defensive end. And despite the fact it feels like Hartenstein has been in the league for a very long time, he's only 25 years old as well. So is still developing, is still growing, and has never really had that sort of starting role. And with Mitchell Robinson out for a chunk of this next season, he has been awesome. Isaiah Hartenstein has been for this New York Knicks team. So him being a potential option there as the Raptors, maybe a cheaper alternative to a Nic Claxton. If the Raptors do want to move in a different direction at the center spot, go a little bit younger. Again, it's marginally younger, 3 years now at this point for, Hartenstein versus Poeltl, but definitely an interesting piece that I'd also look at if the Raptors are interested in bringing in another big man during free agency. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Who do you guys want to see starting at center for the Toronto Raptors next season? You guys are the best to make it the star. Subscribe to the channel if you guys haven't already. I'm signing out. Cheers.